Let us look at an example of cost volume profit analysis for a company with a sales mix of three products. Now, what is meant by the term sales mix? So, sales mix is the relative combination of quantities of products that constitute the total unit sales. So we'll learn more about the sales mix as we go through this example. So a shoe manufacturing company has three product lines of shoes: casual, formal, and sports, with contribution margins of $3, $2, and $1 respectively. Now the president foresees sales of 200,000 units in the coming period, consisting of 20,000 units of casual, 100,000 units of formal, and 80,000 units of sport shoes. The company's fixed cost for the period are $255,000. So let's understand the sales mix now with reference to this example. So out of a total sales of 200,000 units, the relative quantities of sales of these three product lines is 20,000, 100,000, and 80,000. So 20,000, 100,000, and 80,000. So let's take the ratio of these. So we can remove these 4 zeros from each of these. So it becomes 2:10:8. And if we divide these numbers by 2, we get 1:5:4. So again, the definition of sales mix is the relative combination of quantities of products that constitute the total unit sales. So here the relative combination of quantities of products leads us to a ratio of 1:5:4. And if this sales mix is said to be continuing for any number of units of sales, then the ratio of the sales for individual product lines will remain the same. What that means is that if the sales increases to 400,000 units, then the ratio or the sales for individual product lines will be 40,000 units for casual, 200,000 units for formal, and 160,000 units for sport shoes. Now with this information, what we are being asked to do is A, what is the company's break-even point in units, assuming that the given sales mix is maintained. So when you say sales mix is maintained, that means the sales ratio is going to be 1:5:4 for the three product lines. B, if the sales mix is maintained, what is the total contribution margin when 200,000 units are sold? What is the operating income? And C, what would operating income become if 20,000 units of casual, 80,000 units of formal, and 100,000 units of sports shoes are sold? What is the new break-even point in units if these relationships persist in the next period? So let's consider this building as the manufacturing facility of the shoe manufacturing company. Now, we have been given that the company's fixed cost for the period are $255,000. So the fixed cost is $255,000. The sales expected is 20,000 units of casual. So these are casual shoes. So the sales expected is 20,000 units of casual shoes, 100,000 units of formal shoes, and 80,000 units of sport shoes. We have also been given the contribution margins for each of these product lines. So the casual shoes contribute $3 per shoe. The formal shoes contribute $2, while the sports shoes contribute $1. So with this information, let's try and find out the answer to these three questions. So the information that has been given to us in this example is the contribution margin for casual shoes is $3, for formal shoes is $2, and for sport shoes is $1. The forecasted sales for the next period is 20,000 units for casual shoes, 100,000 units for formal shoes, and 80,000 units for sport shoes. And the fixed cost for that period is $255,000. So the first question is, what is the company's break-even point in units? Assuming that the given sales mix, which is nothing but the ratio of the forecasted sales for the three type of shoes, is maintained. So the given sales mix is 20,000 is to 100,000 is to 80,000, which is nothing but, we can cancel these 4 zeros in each of these numbers. So 2 is to 10 is to 8, and then we can divide each of these by 2. So we get 1 is to 5 is to 4. So this is the sales mix of these three products. Now here we have to find out the break-even point in terms of units. So the break-even point is equal to the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin. Now we know the fixed cost, which is $255,000, but the contribution margin in this example is different for each of the product lines. And basically the formula here for break-even point in terms of units means that how much is being contributed by each unit on an average to recover the fixed cost. So basically we have to find out the average contribution margin, and in this case it will be a weighted average because we have different sales for each of the product lines and different contribution margins. So let's first find out the weighted average contribution margin. So first we have to find out the total contribution margin for each product line and then divide it by the total number of units. So for the first product, the total contribution margin is 20,000 multiplied by 3. For second, it is 100,000 multiplied by 2. And for the third, it is 80,000 multiplied by 1. And all this should be divided by the addition of the forecasted sales of the three products, which is 100,000 plus 80,000 plus 20,000. So that becomes 200,000. So this is equal to 20,000 into 3 is 60,000 plus 100,000 into 2 is 200,000 plus 80,000 into 1 is 80,000, and this divided by 200,000. Now 8 plus 6 is 14, so this becomes 140,000 plus 200,000, which is 340,000, divided by 200,000. So 2 tens are 20, 2 ones are 2, 1 carry over, 2 sevens are 14. So this becomes $1.7. So we now know the average contribution margin for each unit being sold by this shoe manufacturing company. So let's now find out the break-even point in terms of units. So fixed cost is 255,000 and the contribution margin is 1.7. So this is equal to, so we can remove this decimal and add a 0 here. Now let's divide this number by 17. 17 ones are 17 and 17 ones are 17. So 25 minus 17 is 8. So 8 carry over. So 85 divided by 17 is 5. And then these 4 zeros. So the break-even point in terms of units is 150,000 units. So now this is the overall sales, but we can also find out the individual sales needed for each of the products, because we have been given that the sales mix is being maintained. So the first product line, which is casual, has a ratio of 1:5:4. That means out of a total of 5 plus 1 plus 4, that is 10 parts, the casual product line has a portion of 1. Similarly, the formal product line has a portion of 5 out of the total of 10, and the sports shoes has a portion of 4 out of a total of 10. So for casual, break-even point is equal to 1 divided by 10 multiplied by 150,000, which is equal to 15,000 units. For formal, the ratio is 5 by 10, and we'll multiply this by 150,000. So 0 gets cancelled with 0. So 3 zeros, 5 5s are 25, 5 1s are 5, 6 and 7. So 75,000 units. And for sports shoes, the break-even point is 4 divided by 10 multiplied by 150,000. 15 fours are 60, and then 3 zeros. So 60,000 units. Now let's move to the second question. So the second question is that if the sales mix is maintained, what is the total contribution margin when 200,000 units are sold? And what is the operating income? If the sales mix is maintained, what is the total contribution margin when 200,000 units are sold, and what is the operating income? So let's first find out the total contribution margin. So in this example, we have been given the contribution margin per piece or per unit of casual, formal and sports shoes. And we have also been given the number of units of sales for each of the shoe types when the total sales is 200,000 units. So now the total contribution margin will be equal to the unit contribution margin multiplied by the number of units for each of the product types. So we have 3 multiplied by 20,000. So this becomes the total contribution margin for casual shoes, plus 2 multiplied by 100,000. This is the total contribution margin for formal shoes, plus 1 multiplied by 80,000, which is the total contribution margin for sports shoes. So this is equal to 3 2s are 6, so 60,000 plus 200,000 plus 80,000. So this is equal to 8 plus 6 is 14. So 140,000 plus 200,000, which is 340,000 dollars. So this is the total contribution margin. Now the next part is to find out the operating income. So we know that operating income is equal to the total revenue minus the total cost. So this can also be written as total revenue minus the fixed cost plus the variable cost, because total cost is the addition of fixed cost and variable cost. So this is equal to total revenue minus fixed cost minus the variable cost. So opening the bracket here, so plus minus becomes minus. Now this is equal to TR minus V minus F. So just rewriting it. Now total revenue minus the total variable cost is nothing but the contribution margin. So this is the total contribution margin minus the fixed cost. So in our case, if we substitute the values, the contribution margin is 340,000 minus the fixed cost, which is 255,000. So this is equal to $85,000. So if we try to understand this term here, contribution margin is nothing but the amount of sales which contributes towards the payment of the fixed cost till the break-even point is achieved. And then after the break-even point, it contributes towards profit. So if we have the total contribution margin, then if we deduct the fixed cost, whatever is remaining is our profit or operating income. Now let's move to the third part. So the third part is, what would operating income become if 20,000 units of casual, 80,000 units of formal and 100,000 units of sports shoes were sold? What is the new break-even point in units if these relationships persist in the next period? So what would operating income become if 20,000 units of casual, 80,000 units of formal and 100,000 units of sports shoes were sold. What is the new break-even point in units if these relationships persist in the next period? So basically, in this part of the problem, the forecasted sales has changed. So let's see the change. So casual, originally it was forecasted as 20,000 units. So again, in this third part, the casual is 20,000 units. Formal was 100,000 units, but now we have 80,000 units of formal. Sports shoes was having a sale of 80,000 units, but now it is 100,000 units. So we have to find out the operating income with this new sales numbers. Now we know from the previous part that operating income is nothing but the total contribution margin minus the fixed cost. So fixed cost is known to us. We need to find out the total contribution margin. So this is equal to 20,000 multiplied by 3 plus 80,000 multiplied by 2 plus 100,000 multiplied by 1 minus 255,000. So this is equal to 60,000 plus 160,000 plus 100,000 minus 255,000. So this is equal to $65,000. So this is the operating income with the changed sales mix. Now the second part is to find out the new break-even point in units if these relationships persist in the next period. So what is meant by these relationships persist? So basically what they're saying is that if the sales mix is going to be 20,000 is to 80,000 is to 100,000, then find out the new break-even point. Now again, we know that break-even point is equal to the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin, and this is nothing but the weighted average contribution margin because we have multiple products. So let's find out the weighted average contribution margin. So this will be the total contribution margin divided by the total number of units. So the total contribution margin will be equal to the total contribution margin of casual plus the total contribution margin of formal plus the total contribution margin of sports shoes. So for casual, the contribution margin will be 20,000 multiplied by 3 plus 80,000 multiplied by 2 plus 100,000 multiplied by 1. And this divided by the total number of units, which is 20 plus 80 plus 100, which is 200,000 units. So this is equal to 60,000 plus 160,000 plus 100,000 divided by 200,000. So this is equal to 320,000 divided by 200,000. So 4 zeros can be cancelled. 2 ones are 2 and then 1 0. 2 16s are 32. So this becomes $1.6. So now the break-even point becomes 255,000 divided by 1.6, which is equal to 159,375 units. Now the break-even point with the original sales mix of 20,000, 100,000 and 80,000 was 150,000 units. So here the break-even point has increased by 9,375 units. And that can be contributed to the fact that we have decreased the sales for the product line which has higher contribution margin and increased the sales of the other product line by the same number of units which has a lower contribution margin. So basically our overall contribution margin has reduced, which means that there are less funds contributing towards the recovery of fixed cost, which means that we have to sell more in order to achieve a break-even point. Now we can find out the break-even point for the individual product lines. The new sales mix ratio is 20,000 is to 80,000 is to 100,000, which is nothing but 2 is to 8 is to 10, or 1 is to 4 is to 5. So the total is 5 plus 4 9 plus 1 10, and the ratio of each of the product lines in the total break-even point is, for casual it is 1 by 10, for formal it's 4 by 10, and for sports it's 5 by 10. So if we multiply each of these ratios with the total break-even point units, then we'll get the break-even point units for each of the product lines.